Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Politics Today, and in this programme we will be discussing the attempted assassination on former President Donald Trump last weekend and asking, has our politics become too toxic and divisive both here and in the United States? And in today's programme I'm joined by Maureen Martin in a new job and position as a parliamentary officer for the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children, together with Dr. Sarah Tung from Prayer for Parliament. So lovely to see you both. Thank you very much. I'll start off with you, Maureen. Congratulations on your new role with the Society for the Protection of the Unborn. But before we discuss that, and I'm very grateful for them for allowing you to come onto the programme, but do you want to share and reflect your political campaign for the Christian People's Alliance, how you felt it went, your overall reflection of the general election, and how many votes did you get?
Well, unfortunately, it was no surprise the result of the general election. You know, Labour won by a massive majority. We knew that was going to happen. Predicted in the polls for months and months and even a year before. So we were not surprised by the result. And my own personal campaign in Lewisham East is a very Labour stronghold. So there's not a lot of campaigning going on, unfortunately, because people just vote for Labour because it's Labour in Lewisham East. But something very interesting did happen on my campaign. I was actually invited to a pro-Islamic hustings. So it's actually put on by the Islamic community and with a church as well. I think it was C.V. Church actually. And I actually attended. So you can imagine when it came to the Israel and Gaza question, all my other candidates to my right were very pro-Palestinian. To my left was a pro-Israel person, but I was the first one to actually say the CPA stand with Israel, their right to defend themselves, their right to, to exist. Well, the whole room went into uproar, literally. I mean, the whole room just erupted. So I was me against a whole room of people. However, I did defend my position quite clearly, even though it's very unpopular, but just goes to show the amount of engagement that community had in this particular issue. So that was my highlight, low light, if you like, from the elections. However, I did get the most votes I ever got any election in Lewisham, which is 404 votes. Not a great deal, but nevertheless, it was a high for me personally. So overall, it was actually a good campaign. Well,
I think congratulations for standing up for Israel there in a very hostile environment, like a modern day Deborah. So, you honour the Lord honour you. You've honoured his people. It's wonderful. And share with us your new and exciting role that you got as a parliamentary officer with the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. Share with us about the ministry and also your role within the ministry. And again, thanks to them that you're on the programme.
Right, so it's SPUC for short, if no one wants to actually pronounce, say, the Society for Protection of Unborn Children. So it's SPUC for short. They've been founded since 1967. They're the oldest pro-life organisation in the world. So they were founded in response to the 1967 Abortion Act, which had been actually debated at the time in January 1967. So they're really a grassroots operation. So they do rely on their grassroots neighbourhood people. We have 60 offices around the country, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland and Wales. So we deal in, we campaign, we recruit and we educate. And this is our aim. So any of your viewers watching who want to get engaged in the pro-life movement or just do something to promote and encourage our parliamentarians, for instance, to be on our side, and that's going to be my job as a parliamentary officer. I will be the liaison between SPUC and our parliamentarians. So I'll build relationships with them to get them on side. If they're not on side, well, hopefully they'll be persuadable, but my job is to get them on side, particularly when bills are being debated and their votes coming up. So that is essentially my job. And please go to the website, join, do something, donate and get engaged, because we need your engagement.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. I'm sure they'll be very happy with that, Maureen. Thank you. And Sarah, great to see you back on the programme. Don't we and you, as a representative for Prayer for Parliament, now have a huge task on your hands with this election result? The fact is that we've got more secularists and Muslims and other ethnic minorities in Parliament than ever before. But not only that, we've lost a lot of high-profile Bible-believing Christians in Parliament.
We have, and it's quite a shock in some respects. And my best wishes, some of the MPs I had a personal relationship with, so I was able to convey my condolences to them. But you know, my overriding sense for those who have lost their seats, well done, good and faithful servant. I just really felt the Lord was very pleased. We could take a whole program talking about what they did in what some of these MPs that had only been in this one Parliament, this one 4 or 5 year period, but they did an awful lot. So they will have other things to go to, and they must feel encouraged. It's really important. And as for those praying, we just need to keep liaising. We always ask for divine appointments and ask that people who are open to prayer and open to the necessity for prayer in Jesus, that they make connections with us or we them. And the game is not over, you know. And the thing is, when there is a crisis, such as happened on the weekend with Donald Trump's attempted assassination, God has prevailed in terms of, certainly in terms of out of Donald Trump's mouth. And my prayer is for real humility for him and for others to recognize. And what was beautiful, actually, was the response from our Prime Minister, the President of the United States, and various others around the world, national leaders, offering their sympathies and respect to Donald Trump. That was a huge breakthrough, a huge break in a positive way.
Absolutely. Also, what's extraordinary is the fact that on the assassination on Donald Trump, everyone's recognizing that this was a miracle, this was the hand of God. So even our secular newspapers here in the UK are giving God the glory. And on that, Maureen, what are your thoughts on the attempted assassination of President Trump? In America, they call him president because anyone who's been president is still a president, but we our British media like to call him a former president or a presidential candidate for the Republican Party. But share with us your thoughts on what happened on Saturday, the 13th of July, when Trump was nearly assassinated.
Yeah, last Saturday. Yeah, it's an outrageous act of political violence. But the sad thing is, no one's really surprised. That is the really sad thing about it. You know, political pundits have been saying for months, even, you know, a year, that the likelihood of the end result of the rhetoric or the end result of the Get Trump campaign, if they couldn't get him with the lawfare and all the other things that they've been trying, the end result would be an assassination or assassination attempt. So this is really sad that we've come to this place that we're expecting our political leaders to be assassinated. And this is not a good reflection on the political climate, you know, here or in the States, for instance. I mean, we know that, you know, assassinations are not anything new. We had an attempt on Reagan in '81. We know the most famous assassination of all, Kennedy in '63. So, you know, have we learned from our lessons? I'm not sure we have. So hopefully, with this particular attempt and the sympathies and the you know, I guess empathy that's coming from the political leaders around the world, maybe this would be a wake-up call, not only just for them, also for the rest of the public, for, you know, the rest of us to realise this cannot go on. We can't keep dealing with our, well, political rivalry in this very violent fashion.
Absolutely.
It cannot exist.
And Sarah, please share your thoughts on what has, ever since Donald Trump has emerged on the political scene back in 2016, when he first ran for US president against Hillary Clinton. We've seen nothing but hatred being directed towards him. He's been compared to Hitler, he's been called a fascist. And what we're seeing with the political rhetoric is absolutely extreme that's been levelled against him. Is it any wonder we see this kind of radicalisation of the youth in America, that one 20-year-old called Tomas Matthew Crook had the audacity to be so indoctrinated that he wanted to assassinate President Trump to ensure that he wasn't America's next president? Young
people tend to see things in black and white. I'm wearing black and white. I didn't do that on purpose.
So am I.
But they tend to see things in black and white, and as we mature with life experience, we start to see the grays, we start to see the nuances of things. And so that a young person would be charged to make a difference in this world, in a world of selfies and self-importance and self-promotion, it makes perfect sense in a world that makes absolutely no sense at all. So the fact that this happened is, as Maureen has alluded to as well, in a way it's not a surprise, but it's like giving young people loaded guns and saying, here's the target, and without the discretion of a relationship with God that gives you that conscience, or the nuances, you think you're doing right, and actually you're not at all, but you don't have the necessary refinement. And there's so much really brainwashing in universities and in schools to sort of encourage this attitude of, we know what's right, and if there's disagreement, then you're wrong and you're evil. And so disagreement has become evil. So
Absolutely.
It's no wonder.
And Maureen, if we take the demonisation of Donald Trump, particularly when he came here as US president, the big protest in London led by our Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, including our new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, were disgusting. Not only that, Trump has been compared to Hitler, he's been called a fascist, a threat to American democracy and freedom. And also we see this same sort of hatred and being directed against Nigel Farage and those who supported Brexit. We see the same hatred across the Channel in France against Marine Le Pen. And it seems to be that those that are vilified are those who want to come out of the globalist agenda, who are not in with the liberal elites. They're not in with the liberal media, but they want to stand for the nation state. They want to stand behind the flag and stand for the family, to stand and be patriotic and are not part of the liberal elite. So share with us how these are the ones that have been demonising anyone who opposes the globalist agenda, particularly none other than President Trump himself.
Well, of course, they've been after Trump since he came down the escalators in 2016. It's been a constant witch hunt ever since then. But, the left are masters at projection. They accuse their rivals or enemies of what they are doing. It's one of their key tactics. They do all, and they're so good at it. They're masters at it, in fact. And unfortunately, they have the mainstream media to carry the water for them. So, the whole thing is about controlling public opinion, of course. So if you can demonise your enemies, then the public opinion is going to be against your enemies. But meanwhile, they're the ones that are doing all the things they accuse their enemies of. And the end of that rhetoric is you get political violence, which is we've seen in more than one way with Trump, and previous presidents have been assassinated, and other political persons that have been targeted. And we see it also with other people on the right, like Nigel Farage, Marine Le Pen in France. They are opposing the globalist agenda, and the globalist agenda, they're on life support. So of course, they're going to demonise their enemies, and unfortunately, as I said, the end result of that is always going to be violence.
And Sarah, I think we also have to stop and pause and really think about what happened to Donald Trump on Saturday, the 13th of July, that if he didn't move his head slightly after he heard the first bullet, and it was only centimetres away, if not millimetres away from his head from actually being a fatal assassination, it hit his ear. How much can you say that this is down to the grace of God and the protection of God, and how God deserves all the credit? Because not only has he saved Donald Trump last Saturday, but he also saved America from what would probably unfold would be another bloody American Civil War.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even sure how to answer that, because there's just so, it's so explosive. I think the thing is, it isn't to say God's on Donald Trump's side, but that he's drawing Donald Trump to be on God's side. Because we don't want to do the same thing that we have said these globalists are trying to do, which is to create hate. The folks need to read up on cultural Marxism and Douglas Murray and various. that you need to read, because this starts back in the 1850s. This idea of Marxism coming from Karl Marx, but this idea of controlling the state in a way that seems like you're not controlling it at all. And it is evil. In terms of Donald Trump, I think, we pray for his humility, and he has said, God saved him, basically. But we want for him to be humble. We want others to recognize what God is doing and to take stock and to recognize that we are not all important. It is God that's all important, and Absolutely. It is God that has his agenda. And while he allows us to move through life and do the things that we choose to do, be they good or evil, at certain moments, God will call a halt to the direction of flow and change things. I think, yeah, absolutely, on the weekend, had Donald Trump been assassinated, it's quite frightening to think what would have happened to the political system and to what would have happened in America.
Absolutely. And Maureen, sadly in recent years, we've seen demonstrations and hatred organised by the liberal media and of course also by the hard political left, particularly those who campaign for pro-life and this demonisation of people that want to protect the unborn child. Those who stand for righteousness are vilified and attacked. Do you think that the rhetoric will now begin to change after the attempted assassination on Donald Trump?
Oh, we hope so. I mean, there are lessons to be learned from history. But unfortunately, history tells us that we don't learn our lessons very well. We have very short memories, in fact. So, yes, the desire is, yes, we will see that this is an outrageous political act of violence, and we will make sure it doesn't happen again. But we've said that before, like with the Holocaust. We said never again, and yet we saw it happen on October the 7th. We said that with Ronald Reagan, he was attempted. Again, we've seen another attempt from another political person. But it's the whole agenda of the enemy is to divide and conquer. So that's his goal. So the more he can get us fighting each other, the more he can distract us from what he's doing. And that's the entire agenda of the enemy. These are distractions. And unfortunately, someone actually did die in that assassination attempt. A person in the crowd attending actually died, and others were injured. So the event did not go without anyone being, hurt in the process. So unfortunately, I would like to say yes, we'll learn our lessons, but I don't have much hope, unfortunately.
I think a lot will depend on what the media does with this. And sadly, apparently, some of the stations in America were saying, oh, he wasn't actually hit with a bullet, it was a bit of display. He fell, whereas clearly he, on his own steam, he ducked. So some people just don't learn.
I don't know how anyone can come to that conclusion when you see the video footage and you actually hear the bullets kind of whiz by and everything else, and actually killed one of Donald Trump's supporters, a father of 50 that used his body to protect his wife and his children, died. And then 2 others are very critically injured and stuff as well, which does remind me that we can dismiss this and saying, look at the heated election campaign and electioneering going off in the States. Well, that's America. But if we look at what's happened here, in recent years, we've had the murder of Joe Cox, Labour MP, during the very famous EU referendum, and also David Elms, which is he was a brilliant member of Parliament, loves his constituency, loved people, and yet he was brutally stabbed to death. So we are not immune from this, but isn't there a connection between incitement and rhetoric and political violence? Because back in 2007, I had the opportunity to actually meet and discuss with the former French Prime Minister, and she was Prime Minister under President Mitterrand. And she said, the trouble with you Brits is you don't understand the power of words. You allow anyone to effectively say what they want without consequences, and words have consequences. So isn't there an actual fact that our mainstream media, our liberal politicians now really have to tone down their rhetoric against Trump, against the likes of Nigel Farage and others. So our politicians don't feel that they are threatened or intimidated like they are now.
They have to recognise that they're the ones that are stirring the pot, and other people that are less refined or more impressionable, they pick up this and think, I want to save the world, I want to be a hero. There will be those who think that Mr. Cooks was trying to be a hero, and it's quite possible. And where would he have got that idea from? It didn't come from his own head. So I agree. And so the media and politicians need to shake hands, need to be, yes, they can be enemies of thought, enemies of opinion, enemies of state in the sense of disagreeing, but they have to agree to disagree. They have to respect one another. They have to exude that and get that message across. We respect each other. And there have been moments, you have a debate and at the end they shake hands and that the camera is still rolling and you see that. That's so important. But yes, I agree with the Prime Minister of France, the previous Prime Minister of France, who said words are powerful. Words are very, very impressionable and make an impression on individuals. And we need to take responsibility for what we say.
Absolutely. And Maureen, political discourse is so important, particularly the fact that our now Foreign Secretary David Lammy's in trouble for a lot of his social media postings directed towards President Trump. No doubt our Mayor of London will be as well, Sadiq Khan. But I think also that our new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, deserves a lot of credit in reaching out to President Trump to show his condolences. And this is what we want, isn't it? Because he realises that it's very, very likely that the Republicans, especially now, will actually win the US presidential election in November. Donald Trump will be America's 47th president and there will be a second term in office. And that Keir Starmer and his Labour government will have to work with our closest ally in the world, which is the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. It'd be a logical thing to do, a diplomatic and statesmanly thing to do. But yes, they have to. They have to work together. They are historically our biggest and greatest ally, the United States. And historically, we've always had a great relationship with them. And Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan were great friends, not just allies, but really good friends as well. Donald Trump and Boris Johnson were maybe not so much great friends. I don't know how that actually worked out. And of course, Sadiq Khan was completely, against Donald Trump, and embarrassingly so, when he visited the nation. So it's important for our leaders to recognise that, put aside your political differences for now and use the language of, diplomacy and statesmanship to actually foster healthy relationships, because there are hotspots around the world at the moment. A lot of hotspots, the war is breaking out. We need our allies aligned so we can at least present a united front to our enemies.
Yeah.
What comes across to my mind too is do unto others as you'd have do unto you. And nothing is so profound as Sir Keir Starmer or any other politician. That could have been me.
Absolutely.
And they have to start recognizing we can attack our enemy, or we can recognize that if we attack them and the world attacks them, our turn might be next. So it can be both a diplomatic reason and self-preservation if the diplomacy isn't important enough to them.
Absolutely. And Sarah, what is the Christian response to political discourse and how we have to stand not only for righteousness, but also for love, justice, and also peace in our conduct as well. And this is probably what's lacking in our parliament. This is what's lacking in our politics in the Western world. We've come out of our Judeo-Christian heritage. We've abandoned it. We've abandoned the values of the Bible that God's given us. Very few members of parliament now are actually swearing a leath of allegiance on the Bible itself. They have their own secular values that they have, but there is nothing that compares to the morality and the standards set in the Bible. But share with us how Christian discourse should be politically.
First of all, we need to engage. We need to recognize that politics is a part of our world. We are in the world. We're not of the world, but politics is in the world. And if we ignore it, it just continues to erode our Christian values, because by staying out of it, that is what has happened. We need to pray for salvations for those politicians that have walked away from God, or are oblivious to who God actually is, or have been indoctrinated to believe that it's a heinous, evil concept to believe in this monstrous God who is full of ego and full of hate. You know, they have this ridiculous concept, and all you need to do is look at the life of Jesus. He said, you look at me, you see the Father. And so there needs to be a lot of prayer sown in. Of course, I would say that I'm involved in prayer, but a lot of prayer, and write letters and watch the news, and don't watch biased news, or watch lots of different news so that you find your own opinion. I sometimes hear phrases that come off certain television channels, and I think, but they're not. For example, you mentioned at the beginning of the program, people are calling him ex-president. He's not an ex-president. According to the American system, once you've been a president, you're always president. So he is not former president, he is president. Yes, he is a former president, but he is President Trump. Biden will always be President Biden. Obama will always be President Obama. It doesn't have anything to do with politics. It is their way of using the term president. And so we need to regard that. So in terms of a general thing, we need to be involved through prayer, we need to be involved through research, we need to be involved through writing letters to our MPs. Sometimes maybe some of us may feel called to go out to protest peacefully in a positive way. That will bring life to those who may agree. Maureen, you did well in your election this time. You stood for Israel, and we can say on a theological basis that you did well, but we can also say other people heard you that otherwise might not say anything, but they know, they agree with you, and you got their vote.
Exactly.
So we have to take a stand.
Sarah and Maureen, thank you so much for being my guests on this week's Politics Day. Both done a great job. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for watching this program. Praise God that we saw divine intervention and the hand of God's protection over President Trump, and what would have likely led to political violence after his death. Thankfully, that was averted, but also we have to be aware of our rhetoric. We have to be aware of our political discourse, that we need to sow seeds of love, peace, and righteousness, and we replace evil with good. This is the mark of a true Christian in politics. So I want to thank you for watching this week's edition of Politics Today.